The corruption epidemic that South Africa is currently battling often finds fuel in the media. We hear this term fake news being bandied about all the time. So here's the question: what will the post-COVID environment look like in this respect? Part 3 now of The State We're In with Professor Ashwin Desai from the University of Johannesburg. Professor, good afternoon to you. Before we get to the media, I just want a quick view on this, if you don't mind. It was our lead story at lunchtime today. We have a former ANC mayor facing corruption charges, elected to the KwaZulu-Natal legislature. The focus of our conversation this week has been around corruption. What does this move say about the current climate?
Well, you know, for me, it produced contradictory feelings, which talks about how shameless we become. Outrage at one level, because Sisha Zikalala was telling us he's waging a war against corruption. He becomes an accomplice of corruption. On the other hand, there's a certain amount of relief, which means the bar is so low, because she's not the head of eThekwini municipality, which was working like an ATM. And so this is where we're at, the low end. But all I can say, Jeremy, is that who wants to be a servant? All of us want to be servants if we look at Sandile Gumede's garage when the Hawks raided it.
Let's turn our attention now to corruption flourishing in a time of crisis. I've just been speaking to a person about how commerce can flourish on the dark net during the COVID pandemic. Corruption also flourishes at a time of crisis, and we've seen that most notably, have we not, with this PPE tender scandal.
Absolutely. And you know, in the academia, people get tired of sometimes of us raising all these issues about the patriotic bourgeoisie. But it really brings home to bear this idea, not only about how quickly people make this money through fake startup companies, but how quickly they spend it, the kind of conspicuous consumption. And the whole notion of this patriotic bourgeoisie, built through tenders, will somehow be of different ethics, a different sense of compassion to people, where they came from and so on, is a myth. And so out of crisis, you know, they say it's opportunity, but this is opportunity of a grand scale. And one can barely read the amount of corruption. And these are the very people who come back to say they're acting as the servants of the people. And so it just brings home to us how deeply embedded in the state structures, through cadre deployment, the government is.
And this, of course, then reinforces the role of a responsible and upstanding media.
Absolutely, and you know, otherwise we go, you know, we're caught in a trap, isn't it? We have to get out our stories, but often at the same time we get caught in a trap, because often we become the purveyors of fake news. Now, you know, COVID is replete with this, both in the academia and in the media and amongst politicians. You know, probably the highest example of this is Trump and disinfectant. Of course, we're used to this. We had people using doom to take out, you know, the devil in people's bodies and so on. But also in academia, you know, we have something called peer review, which is supposed to be a kind of gatekeeper to fake research. But 2 doctors published articles in the best journals, Lancet, the New England Journal of Science, where they said they did research on COVID in 1,200 hospitals. And really, it was found out they couldn't have done this research. They didn't have access to the information. But because of the need to publish research, they bypassed all the peer review mechanisms. And the cost of that is that people believe in the efficacy of the research. They then put that research into practice and people die. Unfortunately, I must tell you now that one of the 2 doctors who are involved in that fake research, surname happens to be Desai, and he's no relation, neither is it me.
All right, that's where we're going to leave it. Never thought about that. Professor Ashwin Desai, that is the state that we're in for the past 3 days. Thank you very much indeed. And next week, I'll be joined by ANC veteran Mavuso Msimang.